recordings for 2024 on our website, so you'll be able to have access to those if you missed one, and past years are there as well. So I want to first thank our 2024 WILL sponsors. ComSense is our lead sponsor. Don't think anyone is here today, but Eiley, Cardinal Cushing, thank you, Michelle, Friendship Home, Ava, George Toma, Washington, TV O'Brien, Gibb Software in the back corner, Enbridge, Marie Max, Boston, Leone Marketing, there she is, Tiny and Sons Glass, there's a couple people that are guests of his, so feel free to wave. And of course, Pure First, Nicole. So everybody, so we do have our sponsorship for 2025 brochures coming out soon, so if this is of interest or any of our other programs, just reach out to Heather or me. Okay, so I'm going to start by introducing Nicole. Nicole Hales is the president of PR First. She stands at the helm of the agency that has built a reputation for ensuring best results for its wide range of clients, in addition to cultivating and maintaining relationships with media and influential professionals. Nicole joined the PR First team in May of 2011 as an account executive. Fast forward to 2021, when she assumed leadership of the firm, taking over the reins from its founder, Jim Farrell. A Plymouth resident, Nicole brings more than 25 years of writing, editing, and media relations experience to her post, including work for the Griffin Report and Plymouth Patch. She is highly regarded for being an organized and cool-tempered professional and for her creative mind and excellent communication skills. Nicole holds a BA in Media Studies from Ithaca College and currently serves as president of the board of directors of Habitat for Humanity of Greater Plymouth and as a member of the Leadership South Shore Steering Committee.
Thank you very much for that. I should put on there, I think that was written before, I'm also on the chair, or on the board of the South Shore Chamber of Commerce, so now I'm embarrassed that I didn't have that on there.
Like, make that edit.
Yeah, and that.
And she's my PR person.
Thank you, Jen. Well, it's my pleasure to be here with Angelica today, and I'm really excited to have had these opportunities to talk with you before this and today, and to have more people get to know you, get to know NeighborWorks Housing Solutions, and we are especially grateful because this is a big day for Angelica. She's starting the day with us, and their gala is this evening as well. So, so doing it all. So, like I mentioned, she is currently the Chief Operating Officer at NeighborWorks Housing Solutions. She's originally from Columbia. She studied and earned her undergraduate degree in anthropology, where she was originally introduced and exposed to ideas about affordable housing, and really found that to be her life's passion. And that brought her to Northeastern University, where she earned her master's degree in human services. She then spent some time working for a variety of different organizations, helping with doing a lot of shelter work, several homeless and domestic violence shelters. Lots of experiences here, and then came to join NeighborWorks Housing Solutions. So from there, I wanted to hand it over to you, Angelica, if you want to talk a little bit more about your own career experience, what led you, how you got from where you started up to NeighborWorks, and please be sure to talk about your interview with NeighborWorks as well, because I think that's a great story.
Well, thank you everybody for having me. This is a major pleasure and an honor to be here, sharing some of my life stories and really kind of sharing more about our organization. I have a couple of colleagues with me that I would like to talk about later on. But I'm thrilled to be here. I don't necessarily think I have so much to impart other than telling you all kind of like my life journey and professional path. So I studied anthropology in Bogota, and one of my theses was focused on urban development. So it was one of the first affordable urban development communities in Bogota. And so it was more ethnology focused because I was doing a lot of interviews. And so as I met more families in this affordable community, I just started learning more about the policies behind affordability in Bogota. Bogota has right now around 10 million people, and so it's a very heavy, hectic city. When I studied my undergrad, we didn't have like a heavy transportation system as we do now. And so transportation for some of the more remote neighborhoods in the city was very difficult. And so I just was interested in learning more of that. And so I focused my thesis, although in anthropology, it had a very heavy focus on policy and affordable housing. And so when I started here, I came here to Massachusetts after working in Yellowstone National Park for the summer. That was my summer job. It was just fun, so different. And it was just, I loved it because Bogota is just this heavy, hectic city, and Yellowstone is literally the opposite from that. So the first time I got there, I couldn't sleep for a couple of nights because it was so quiet. I'm like, what? And then there were bears and so that was like mind-blowing to me. Like, I'm used to buses and cars and hectic movement. And so I loved it. I went back 3 summers and worked in Mammoth Hot Springs. And so I just work on my English, made some money, bought a couple of laptops, things for college. It was just fun. And in Bogota, our universities are not commuting universities. We tend to live with our parents and commute to the universities. We don't have dorms. And so living in the dorm in Yellowstone was also this massive new experience to me. And so I loved it. So I started looking at universities, and my mom had come here to Massachusetts. And so I applied to a couple of colleges, and I got into Northeastern. And so I moved here. And at that time, I had met somebody in Yellowstone, so we were together. We actually lived in Florida, and then we lived in Montana for some time as well, and then we moved here for our graduate program. And I got familiar with the Hope 6 Fund, and I started working for this private company called Housing Opportunities Unlimited in Milton. And so we were contracted by Boston Housing Authority to do the demolition and rehouse the families in old colonies. And so that was a very interesting experience because I came here to Massachusetts, and the first interactions I had were with people in South Boston, and their accent was so and I had such a hard time. Like it was everything that people say sometimes about Boston, like park the car, and I just had to kind of like get used to it. So it was just a very challenging but very learning experience. I got involved with federal housing, state housing. I started learning about subsidies, and I loved it. There was a lot of case management, and so I started learning about bankruptcy and the actual American system so that I could guide some of the families, because my caseload was also Spanish speaking. And so a lot of the families didn't necessarily know the system or how to advocate for their children. What is an IP, a 504? And so like learning all that was just an amazing opportunity. And so after that, I moved into a more of a subsidized setting in mixed income. And so I work for in South Boston for Harbor Point. And so Harbor Point is a wonderful community of mixed income that has very deep roots in the community because it's one of the oldest affordable mixed income communities really in Massachusetts. And so I started learning more about the work that they did with the families there, and how different it was to have very wealthy students from all sorts of the world living with very low-income families in this setup, and what that implies for the dynamic in the community. Simple things like parking, the access to the swimming pool, and navigating those challenges was just very interesting to me. So I graduated from my master's degree at that time and learned all that and continued my career in housing. And I was working for Christensen Women's Union after. Now it's empath. And so I opened a couple of shelters for them and did some congregate housing, oversee a couple of domestic violence shelters. And in my work, when I became pregnant, I was driving to an emergency appointment. I got a call. There's something going on. We think the perpetrator might be here. We had a security protocol where my staff, all women, would go into a center point, and then we would meet there, and then we would go to the site together. So we would never be alone on the site. So it was maybe 11 p.m., and I was driving, 9 months pregnant, where I said to myself, this is it. I can't compromise the safety of my child, and I can't feel comfortable making decisions for the team and the families while my priority really is right now my baby. And so I found this opportunity at South Shore Housing at the time as assistant director. And so I, 9 months pregnant, I'm just going to go for an interview. And so I got there, 9 months pregnant. I interviewed early November, and my baby, Ben, was born November 28th. So I was very pregnant. And I came in, and I was sharing this story because I came in, and there was a massive table, and there were 7 people there. It was like a board interview. And so I came in all pregnant, and they were all like, and I was all like, and I thought, like, this job must pay great money. Interviewing me, like, wow. So, and I was comfortable because I had a job, so I was very assertive and secure, and I did well. And then at the end, I was like, it's okay if you guys don't hire me. I would never sue you. So it's all right. It was like just funny, and then a couple of days later, I got a call, and I got offered the position, and I got 2 months off with my baby. At that time, there wasn't paid family medical leave, so it was like all the savings. And then I started this opportunity at South Shore Housing that became Housing Solutions, and then we merged in 2019 with NeighborWorks Housing Solutions, and we were able to expand our services, and COVID happened, and then soon after I was promoted to Chief Operating Officer. And so in this journey, this has been my professional journey. So it's been a balance of work and personal life, because my personal life and my professional life have always been very close related. Being pregnant and interviewing, and there was a very touching moment being pregnant and working with moms with children.
Yeah.
I felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect before I had kids, because you don't fully understand some of the struggles that moms face. Not that you can't connect or guide them, but there is a difference when you have a priority, like your child is a priority and a major responsibility. And so having my kids allowed me to, I think, become softer, more patient, and never forget how important, like, that professional life balance is, and being able to impart that to my team. It's basically 90% women that we work with. It's human services field, and so talking and walking the talk is important. Like being able to say, if you have a PTO meeting today, yes, of course, please attend your meeting, we'll cover. That has always been paramount because of the exposure that I had in shelter with women and now as a mom. And so, that has been my journey.
And now we're up to COO. That's great. I know, and you started to talk a little bit about, the idea that women can have everything, personal success and professional success, and balancing the two, and kind of figuring out how that works together, and is it a separation or is it something combined? Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, and then also how you actually define your success as well, in addition to just balancing your personal and professional life and all of your priorities?
Professionally, I find success to be tangible in terms of applying for development grants, working with the team to make sure triage happens correctly so that when we're serving families, they're properly triaged. So it's very tangible work in our organization, completing applications for somebody that is homeless and making sure the applications are updated. While in my personal life, making sure that my children feel comfortable and safe and that they understand that although my schedule is difficult, I am always there for them. It's a tough balance, but one that we manage at the office, I think, because our leaders, our CEO is a very family-oriented person. And so we're able to make decisions and operate as a team based on those decisions. If I, for example, my kid is sick and I have a very important meeting, even with a state person, I know that I can count with my team and a couple of very strong individuals and leaders to be there for me on my behalf and feel comfortable picking up my kid at school. And so that has come with time and experience. I don't think you're able to make those decisions when you're a young mom and you're pressed by the responsibilities of your work, especially when it's a very demanding work based on housing crisis, domestic violence. There is a lot of that in the lines of business that we have. And so making those very difficult decisions, prioritizing your children, sometimes above a family that you're serving, is a very tough place, but one that you can feel comfortable at as you grow in your team, and as you grow a team that you can depend on. And so I think the work-life balance has a lot to do with your support system, including your professional team and the people that you can rely on. And then giving yourself permission to prioritize what's truly important for you. Because a lot of the times I miss school appointments or medical appointments. My ex-husband worked from home for a long time with my children, and so I had that opportunity to have him do that. But then I would come home and feel so guilty about not being there, not knowing what happened, and then I would just think about, how was my day? Was my day more important than being at that appointment? When I sit with my feelings, am I comfortable about that decision? And so I think you grow into that. You grow into giving yourself the permission to say, no, I am going to go to the doctor's appointment. And Cindy's going to take that other meeting at the State House, and I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to check in with her once I'm done with the doctor. And if she needs me, then I'm going to make sure I have my laptop. But it's a balance, and I think something that you grow into as you become more experienced and you grow a stronger team that works a lot with you.
Yeah. Kind of leading into that and thinking about your team in general, I think that it is a challenge and it's a journey to get to that point, especially as a woman in that kind of decision making. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you have maybe helped some of your team, especially women, also start to feel comfortable with those kinds of decisions, and kind of also leading on to, you work at a nonprofit, and with changes come lots of anxiety and uncertainty. And so when there are times in our days when whether that be external or things going on in the organization itself, how do you help them to feel comfortable in those decisions, and also just generally kind of manage the anxieties that come with uncertainty?
The anxieties that come with uncertainty are difficult to navigate, especially in such a difficult political environment and serving families that a lot of the times don't necessarily understand the system or have migrated here because they have children and they're looking for a better life. And so setting the expectations with the team early when you're hiring them and when you're building a team is really important, because we work in a very stressful and high crisis environment, and burnout is very obvious in our industry. And so setting up expectations that are high and clear from the beginning and understanding the staff needs is also very important. And so a lot, if not 90% of the team that I have in shelter are women and their moms of young children. And so allowing them to have flexibility when it's needed works both ways for us. And so if there is an emergency, a crisis, they have to be there at 6 p.m. They understand that that's part of the requirements. But if they have to leave at 1 because there is a doctor's appointment, there's that flexibility as well. And so I think we operate in a very flexible environment precisely because the nature of our business is so crisis oriented, and it's not as rigid as another industry is where you work 9 to 5. The other thing that we have talked and created internally are positions that schedules are different. So we have mom hours, we call them, where we have part-time positions almost 9 to 2 p.m., where we hire specific staff or moms that have young children so that they can join our team, but then they end in the afternoon so that they can always be available for their kids. And we do that intentionally because there is a level of commitment when the mom is there in those hours and they're invested. And they need to be somewhere else in the afternoon. So they get everything done. They're just ready by 2 so that they can get the kids by 2:30 or 3. And so I think it's having clear expectations, but creating the spaces so that staff and the team can feel that flexibility and give that flexibility back to the agency. It really is a two-way street, and so I think allowing that is what helps us cover for each other. Nonprofits, we wear all sorts of hats. We are everything in our offices. When the office is really busy, our Brooklyn office has tremendous amounts of walk-ins. We all take walk-ins. Our executive director, all the way to the frontline staff, because we have a very clear mission in mind, and we want to make sure that families feel that they are at the very least being listened to, that there is somebody here that is ready to say, okay, I don't have those services, but I have these agencies that can help you. And so it speaks on the other side for the staff. We want to make sure that the staff are trained and have that flexibility to provide those services and to be able to give that that reassurance to the families and the individuals that come to us in crisis.
And I think, just listening to you talk now about that, thinking about the example that you're setting as a leader in terms of, being flexible with your own schedule when necessary, taking care of things, that your ability to make those choices then does also trickle down, and your staff members see that as well, and so you know that it's a priority for you and that you value that as a priority for them as well.
Yes. Yeah. It's important so that they don't feel resentful about the work they do, because it's very demanding. It's a very demanding work, and the families that are in need and they're in a crisis cannot always be soft-spoken or come in a great mood because they are in a crisis. And so our staff are dealing with a lot of angry people, frustrated people, a lot of trauma. We see very difficult, terrible stories that have to do with elderly families, with children. And the only way not to take that home and to be able to compartmentalize is really having flexibility and understanding why you're here and why there is a bigger mission. So that one-on-one case management that leaves you exhausted because this mom came and told you that she was being beaten and she's looking for a shelter, she doesn't have a place safe to stay. It happens rather often in our office. And the only way that the staff cannot bring that home is by having some level of balance and by by being able to say, I think I'm going to go early today because I need to take a shower, I need to feel comfortable, I had a really tough meeting. Do you mind? Having that flexibility, I think, makes a whole difference, because I know that staff really cares. That's why she's carrying that with her. Otherwise, she would be oblivious to a person's needs and feelings. And so giving that reciprocity of flexibility and training and the tools to serve properly the families that are in our community, I think that makes a key difference for our staff.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit, as you've experienced it yourself and maybe what you see externally, what are some of the challenges that women face or roadblocks in leadership roles?
Lack of representation, lack of access to resources. Training is very expensive. If you work for a nonprofit, for example, and you want to do leadership training, you have to make sure that your company is ready to support you, that there are funds and grants available. In the private sector, I feel like there are more opportunities that are available for executive leadership, but executive leadership tends to be geared for men. And so creating those opportunities, it's important for women, for us to do. Intentionally hiring, thinking about jobs for mothers that fit mother schedules, having that flexibility when moms need it and when dads need it to create that environment, and then understanding that the societal expectations are there, and there are gender roles that are very heavy that we're all facing, and giving yourself permission to feel comfortable not always meeting those gender roles, and saying no, having boundaries. I think women, we tend to say yes a lot because we think we're going to miss an opportunity. If I don't say yes, I might not be invited to that event. If I don't say yes, he might not take me to the safe house. So it's understanding that you can say no and still get space at the table, and creating the space for others. I think we owe it to ourselves, because in our particular industry there are a lot of women in the human services field, but in the executive leadership there are not. And so how do we train our staff? How do we invest in management training for our frontline staff? How do we hire intentionally different generations so that they're all learning from one another, but we're also building for the company's next generation and who will lead the staff? So I think there is a balance into all of that. But personally, I think giving myself permission to say no was definitely a growing pain and a growing opportunity. And my children helped me with that.
I'm sure they say no.
Yes.
They're great at it.
Yeah. And you learn, like you start prioritizing better. It just takes some time, but you start prioritizing better, and then you learn to say no. And one thing that I think is very important, because I hear it often, people say, why do you take it personally? It's just job, it's just work. Work is personal. Work is personal for me. I do take it personal. And I do get disappointed when I have to fire a staff, or when a grant application doesn't go the right way, or when something happens that the triage didn't go the right way, or we missed a payment. I do take it personal. Not only it feeds my family, quite literally, like it's my financial support, it's also the legacy that I'm leaving. I put 8 hours of my time, if not 10, every day, to this company, to the people that we work, to the families that we serve. It makes it incredibly personal. And so sometimes it's rephrasing that a little bit. When somebody says that, why are you so emotional about that? It is emotional. I'm invested. The passion that you see me when I talk about the company and what we do is also the passion that drives me to work to see my kids, to do the things that I do. And so I cannot disconnect my personal life from my professional life. Because if I didn't have a job, my personal life would be tremendously affected. So how can they not be deeply intertwined? They are personal.
So that's interesting, because I actually was just speaking with somebody about it's not personal, it's business kind of things, and have been thinking a lot about that. And so when you have some kind of disappointment like that you feel very personally, that's professionally related, how do you kind of get over it or process it or deal with it to then be able to move on professionally?
I've learned that you have to cool down for at least 48 minutes, if not 48 hours, and find a person that you can trust, that you can brainstorm with. Not everybody is trustworthy for those type of processes, because your frustration is animated and emotional, and so you have to be able to have a person that you can say, this happened and this is how I feel. What do you think? Even if it's not necessarily something that relates to them. It's just the person that you can offload and figure out kind of went wrong. And at that moment, you can express your emotions. And then when things are cooled down, you can just think about the next step forward. There are things that you can control, and there are things that you cannot control. And in the nonprofit sector, that is very obvious, because the bureaucracy of state and federal contracts is all over us. And so you just make sure that you do your best, and then have a person that you can just rewind and debrief, and then make sure that you have some answers after of how can you do it better next time. I find that having a team, a group of people that you can trust, is key for anybody's success, for anybody's professional success. I think for you to be strong as a professional woman, there is a bit of a team behind you. Whether they're colleagues, whether they're friends, whether they're family members, there are people that are feeding you emotionally, financially sometimes, educationally. They're there. They're like a board for you. And so thinking about your board, right, is sharing that. You don't trust everybody in that board for every single aspect. There's somebody that is better at finances, somebody that is better navigating your emotions because they know you better. So it's relying on that personal board of yours.
I love that. So how about if we shift a little bit and talk a little bit more about your journey in leadership within NeighborWorks, and what inspires you most about the work your agency does?
I think serving families is very inspiring. I like many people, love being surrounded by children and babies, and I think that's what drove me to shelter work to begin with, but it became so difficult to navigate after a while that I missed it. I felt like I didn't see enough kids in my work. It rounds what we do. It gives us the bigger picture. There is a bigger perspective when you see people's daily lives. And so we took over a shelter for the Commonwealth 2 years ago. We serve around 150 families on this site. And it has been quite a challenge. Most of the families have migrated from Haiti. And so creating a team that could meet the needs of 150 families that were totally new to the country was an incredible challenge. Going there and seeing the families as the team was being created was humbling, was empowering, was energizing. The opportunity to help families navigate the processes. When we first started, we had 17 pregnant women, and we had an emergency basically set up with the hospital on site at the hotel. The families were in such a crisis the ambulance was there every day, all day long. And so knowing that the families are stable now, the majority of them are documented and they're working. They are in a crisis, but they're more stable than when they came, is incredibly gratifying. It makes a tremendous difference to know that a kid is vaccinated, has a pediatrician, is enrolled in school, has a 504. It's one kid that has all that. That makes just a world of a difference.
And these are people you talked about who, compared with other people you had seen previously in your career, coming to a shelter and having things with them. You talked to me about how they had nothing.
Yes, the families that the Commonwealth is seeing now are very different from the families that have historically been in shelter. We have historically served single moms, a lot of domestic violence, moms fleeing relationships, young kids, and very low income. So moms that stay home and then something happened, there's a rupture and there is no income saved. And so that was predominantly the families that we tend to serve. 2 years ago, the state called us and told us that they had these sites first in Plymouth, and they were around 12 families. And so we had never done this type of work before. We have 12 scatter site units that are domestic violence, but they're small scatter site units in the community. There wasn't anything like a congregate shelter or a large shelter site. And so when we got there, we had never seen families that had absolutely nothing. Some of the children didn't have shoes. We are used to having families with luggage rolling over. They carry backpacks with things. These families had barely another set of diapers. It was incredibly just confusing almost for staff, not being used to not even having IDs. And so the work that we started doing was very heavy and acute. We hire a whole team of case managers, and then we quickly realized that we needed heavier training because the families that we were serving were in a very acute crisis, very different from the families that we were used to serving. And the towns were incredibly supportive. It was very difficult to navigate some of the policies, especially with our children coming into the school system. So that was also a very interesting teaching moment of how important collaboration is, how important town officials are, and how important they are in terms of the programs that we're serving in the families. And so that was an interesting challenge. In our Taunton site, for example, right now we have 150 families. I was telling you some of the demographics are outstanding. 134 individuals are children under 5 at that site. 134. So when you think about the building, there are 150 families. There's around 500 individuals. 134 of those individuals are children under 5. So the work that we're doing is so different than the work that we used to do. And so pivoting and understanding those needs, training staff appropriately to meet those needs, making sure the staff are not burning out because this crisis is so heavy, has been a very interesting process. And considering the political agenda, it's also, we are a non-profit, non-bipartisan agency, and we depend on donations, and we depend on federal and state contracts. And so we are very mission-driven, but we're also very aware of our role in the community. And we are very heavy developers. We have around 900 units of affordable housing in the communities. And so it's important for us that the towns recognize us as partners because we want to build in those towns. And so it has been an interesting challenge. We had a couple of protesters in our office and in our sites. So also navigating that with our staff, training our staff to make sure that they live in pairs especially now that it's getting darker. Things that you maybe didn't think about before in the service delivery are some of the challenges that we face, but that we know are necessary to make sure that not just the families are safe and the individuals, our staff, feels comfortable and safe working for us, serving the communities. It's a lot.
Very heavy.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's also beautiful to be able to know that children are enrolled in school. We partner with the Plymouth Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and the Big Y, and we sent 12 kids to summer camps for the summer, and it was all paid for. We partner with Horizons for Homeless Children, and we have a nice big playroom in our ton side with all wooden toys, and we have a couple of volunteers that play with the moms, because there's a lot of trauma too, and moms are facing all that stress, and they forget to play. They maybe not sometimes don't know how to play with kids. They're living in bedrooms in a hotel, sometimes with 3 children and 2 beds. Sometimes teenagers in those rooms sharing spaces with 2 adults and a kid. And so creating spaces for the families and especially for the kids has been very important and very grounding. Having children and understanding the importance of play, of the moms having a break, has been a lot of the focus in our site.
So maybe let me end in terms of questions with this, and I know I started to ask it a little bit earlier, but in addition to another question, so I'll be more clear with this one. Now, as we face the uncertainty of a new administration coming in and the impact that that's going to have on nonprofits overall, in addition to locally here, how do you help your staff members, but also your clients, the people that you serve, and also yourself? How do you kind of manage that anxiety that comes from that uncertainty?
Talking to them a lot. Our families in shelter were very stressed about the elections. The state did not make any comments, and so that was part of what we were hoping would happen, just so that the families would know that they weren't going to be kicked out tomorrow with all the children in the street, because you don't necessarily know how the system works if you're not from here, and they're all seeing this information that is blaring everywhere. And so there has been a lot of discussion with our team. There is a lot of reassurance that as an organization, we are going to support them. We have been serving the communities for over 40 years, and we have seen both Democrats and Republican presidents, and we continue to serve those communities. And so sharing that message with the staff has been crucial. Understanding that our mission drives us more than the political climate, and that our partners at the state have been partners at the state for the past 40 years, and some of the programs that we manage and administer won't go anywhere because they're very much needed. We oversee around 3,000 subsidies in Bristol and Plymouth counties alone for Section 8 and state subsidies. And so we know, for example, that those are not going anywhere. And so sharing that with staff and reassuring them that they do have a job, first of all, and that there might be days where it might be unsafe at the hotel because there might be a protester and there might be an ugly message that they're trying to share, but that the overall mission of the organization is to serve the families that are there, and that they have to feel strong about that. It's that continuous work. Same for me. It's been very difficult days. I think everybody has been very aware of the election and the implications, and understanding that the work that we do is grounding above all the political noise that happens sometimes, because we get to actually serve families on a daily basis. And those families are sometimes just numbers, but when you look at the big picture and all the families that we touch just in the Brockton office, we serve around 11,000 families a year. We close on
Just in Brockton?
Yes. We close on 100 homeownership classes. We did classes in Portuguese, Spanish, English, and we're thinking about Haitian Creole for the upcoming years. And so thinking about what grounds us and trying to navigate the political noise is very important to us because it is very stressful. It's very stressful for our staff. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's been my pleasure to talk to you and to learn even more about what you do with NeighborWorks and what NeighborWorks Housing Solutions does. So I am very grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you. I'm very grateful. Thank you for having me. It was really nice to be able to talk about, not me so much, but the work that we do and our team. I think having a strong team, it just is key. I don't necessarily think it's an individual success. Is the team, their work, their belief in the family, the things they do every day, like when you're in shelter and they're out there collaborating to get scarves and hats because winter's coming and we want to make sure that we have enough on the side, and it's just very filling. I was thrilled to send 12 kids to summer camp. That made my summer. It sounds so little, but it was huge. There were 12 children in the Plymouth summer camp in that bus every day, and it was wonderful. And they had backpacks and donations and a smile on their faces, and I think when our staff sees that, they understand why we're here. Why is it so hard? All these forms and all these numbers, all this data entry, it really amounts to these families, to these kids. So having that opportunity to talk about that and seeing the team, it's wonderful. It fills up like my bucket, and I drank that Kool-Aid.
I guess we can open up if anyone has questions for Angelica or Nicole.
I have a question. Thank you. This is so inspiring. I'm taking away a couple of things. I love this mom hours role. And I like the analogy of the board behind you. I love that. You just mentioned something that if you can elaborate on, the classes, the education that you also serve or you provide to your clients. Like you mentioned the home ownership classes, but you also do like a startup business.
Yes.
Business startup.
Yes, we have
series, right?
Yes, we have a small business development, and we have we also do lending and we do home ownership, foreclosure prevention, and reverse mortgages. So we have a very heavy foot on education, landlord education, first-time home ownership education, and then we do small business as well. We do rehabilitation loans. If there is somebody disabled and they need extra money because they need a ramp, we also do those types of services. We also invest in our staff, and we do very specific management training for our upcoming managers that are growing. I like to think that there is another generation of teams that you're hiring that you need to invest on. And we do that as well through education. Amanda, who's here, who's our director of the Housing Consumer Education Center, has another program that is geared for staff for home ownership. So we had around 12 staff that have gone through the program and purchased houses. So we like to think it's a full circle. Our elderly families right now are a key part of who we're serving, especially now that the generation is coming up, and so reverse mortgage, aging in place, is very important for our mission as an organization, and so we do a lot of focus on that in terms of education. We do also financial counseling and credit counseling. We have multiple HUD certified staff in our Brockton office, and I personally found reverse mortgages to be amazing. It's a very specific process. There are only like 10 counselors in the state. We have 2 in our office. And it's a wonderful opportunity for an elderly person who wants to age in place, and has the right conditions. So.
Thank you.
Again, thank you very much, but my question is kind of personal. How did you shut it off? Like, you have your family, and when you go home, and you've dealt with so many incredible things throughout the day, and you have these concerns about maybe a woman that just left you, or how do you, and your family, how do you?
When I worked in shelter, only in shelter, that was very hard for me. I had nightmares and waking up in the middle of the night and anxiety. And so now I rely on my team, and I actually debrief a lot. I don't think I had maybe the experience to share some of those feelings and thoughts with anybody else before, and so they would ruminate in my brain. And now I think I depend on that board and the right people to say, what did you think? Should we call this person? What do we do here? And so I do that a lot. Our executive director and I call each other at odd times, and that helps us, I think, because we can do that. We can say, we have had incidents in our shelter, very serious incidents. 3 a.m, I had staff, ambulances, all sorts of things that had happened, and you have to be there and deploy a team and then debrief. Debriefing, I think, it has been the key for us. We've had some traumatic incidents, and so hiring a company that can talk about mental health, de-escalation, trauma responses, and normalizing that has been also very important, because normalizing trauma happens very quickly, and you get used to seeing that crisis all the time, and then all of a sudden you don't know how much stress you're carrying, and you become angry, and you're carrying all that. So offering that for the team has been very important. We've done a lot of de-escalation. Our HR director is here, so I'm looking at her because she's the one who manages all our de-escalation, trauma-enforced training, and then debriefing. Debriefing has been key for me. Yes.
Anybody else? Well, thank you both again.
Thank you so much.
Feel free to chat, network amongst yourselves. There's plenty of refreshments still. Take a picture.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it's great. I've been kind of thinking about that a lot.
Thank you.
And, yeah.
I think about it all the time. My dad, he's like in my board. When I have like things that sound like
Yeah, oh yeah.
the person I call, like, how do you manage it?
Job lady.
So good. Amanda is great.
Yeah, I talked to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you.